Johnson in the bike world. Well, that's the scene. The bikes are out on the track, but before we go to the action, your commentators this afternoon will be Will Hagan. Also joining us from the UK again is Peter Clifford and John Smales. Let's do a lap of Surfers Paradise in the air with John Smales.
The fastest circuit on which the Swann Series bikes will compete, the 3.2-kilometre Surfers Paradise International Raceway, has an awesome reputation. This is the fastest corner on the Australian mainland. Bikes sweep through here at speeds upwards of 240 kilometres an hour, hard on the power, and with the riders not having a clear view of the exit. The track suits the flat-out style of the two Works Marlboro Yamahas here today. The lap record set last year by Malcolm Campbell on the V3 Honda is 1 minute 12.6 seconds, an average speed of 160 kilometres an hour. Yet for all its pace, Surfers is a relatively safe track. Up the back straight here, when Wayne Gardner lost control last year, he was able to wash off more than 100 kilometres an hour before he hit a drainage ditch quite a way off the track. A power circuit, very abrasive on tyres, Surfers Paradise today is most likely to become Yamaha country. Coming now towards the very important S series of bends at the back of the circuit. The Swann Series is now, as Peter G said, in its 9th year. It's been won 4 times by 2-stroke motorcycles, 4 times by 4-stroke motorcycles. It's been won by 6 men, but only Wayne Gardner has won it more than once, 3 times. As now we come to the grid and the bikes line up for the start of round 1, 12 laps of Surfers Paradise International Raceway, the Swann Insurance Motorcycle Series.
And they line up in the order with the man who's been here 3 times previously, has been 3rd on each of those occasions, Rob McEl, fastest at 1:13.2. The rear tyre and wheel was then taken from his bike and put on Kevin McGee's YZR 500 Yamaha, and Kevin, in his first competitive ride on the bike, went out and equalled the time of the man who came 5th in this year's World Championship. Donny Osmond takes over the Mal Campbell bike that holds the lap record at 1:12.6. And then Mike Dowson will line up on the production YZR 1000 Yamaha with slick tyres fitted. Hamish McNichol on a TZ 750 that Dowson rode last year. Simon Buckmaster, the visiting 25-year-old Englishman, on a 1985 model Honda V3, 2 years younger than the 83 model that Donny Osmond's riding. David Horton, about a 1981 model RGB Suzuki. Tony Armstrong from Queensland. Craig Trinder on the Superbike Suzuki, and then Brent Hayward also on a Superbike. Now out on their final warm-up lap. Exciting lap, stop on the grid, and now really down to business with bike number 1 for the Marlboro Yamaha dealer team, Mike Dowson. The production bike with, as they said, the Superbike kit fitted, i.e. slick tyres, that got it into 16.2 in qualifying, and Mike Dowson hopes to get into the 15s with today.
And joining us today in the commentary position is visiting English journalist Peter Clifford. Peter, how do you see the Swann Insurance Series going?
Well, as we've already said, it's going to be Yamaha country, we feel, here today at Surfers Paradise, and it's a battle of the two 500cc Marlboro Yamahas. They are the fastest racing motorcycles in the world, and I really can't see anyone coming to match them. And of course it means that it's a McEl. He should be the man who's out in front with McGee right on his tail. Now McGee still has a little bit to learn about riding this 500. Quite naturally, McElnay's been on it all year, and as I see this race shaping, McElnay will go out in front, and McGee will try and follow him to pick up the few places where he's a little bit slower. He says that Rob is going much deeper and faster into the corners than he feels safe at this moment, and we're watching McElnay there, and McGee says he's got to pick that up, but at the moment he's actually coming out of the corners faster than McElnay. Now McElnay has to try and break that, get away from McGee, so that the Australian can't learn too early on in the series.
Really, McElnay should be down into low 12s or even 11s on this bike, because last year here, Malcolm Campbell on the V3 Honda with about 138 horsepower did a 1:12.6 to set the lap record, 1:12.8 to McElnay on the Suzuki, and 12.9 to Gardner on the V4, and the Yamaha is better by far than any of those.
It's funny, Rob was just saying a minute ago that he's come here for 3 years previously. He's been the nice guy on the old tired Suzuki that hasn't been very competitive, and suddenly he's here, the number one man, the number one machine sort of thing, on the best motorcycle, and he's suddenly become the baddie that everybody has to beat. It's a real turnaround, and the pressure is certainly on him.
And very important for Rob to make the best of this. This is a low pressure time for him to try and hone his efforts in the World Championships this year, where he was very definitely a number 2 to the reigning champion Eddie Lawson.
Bike ready for a start.
They get away superbly.
McEl and McGee right back in the pack.
It is
Hamish McEl on the TZ750 Yamaha takes the lead.
a bike with very similar power to the YZR 500s, but weighs 50% more. It's 170 odd kilos, very nearly the weight of a production Suzuki today.
12 laps of the Surfers Paradise International Raceway to be covered in this first of 2 heats this afternoon. As you can see, the bright day glow orange of the Marlboro Yamahas midfield as Hamish McEl holds out Donny Osborne on bike 3. Osborne looks down the inside, but McNichol's got the corner covered.
McEl half an hour ago said, I would hate the waiting. There's been a lunch break. And he said, I don't like this sitting about. Like Michael Dowson did last year on this bike, the Pitman's Yamaha, he's launched himself into the lead. McElnay's 4th.
McGee's 3rd in front of him on the 2nd of the Marlboro Yamaha bikes.
And Donny Osborne's 2nd. There he is.
And now you wait for the speed of the 500 Yamahas. They're bound to gobble up the 500 Honda in front, and they've already pulled out of the slipstream. The 2 Yamahas nose to tail.
McElnay takes it over, down, challenging McEl on the inside, looks across at him, says it's my corner, and he slams through. Rob McElnay takes the lead in the Swann Insurance Series, lap 2.
With Donny Osborne slotted 2nd, Hamish McEl back to either 3rd or 4th, depending on McGee's progress.
And we saw Osborne getting a little bit out of shape on the brakes there, and there's McElnay getting a back end a little bit out of shape, and as McGee comes up behind Osborne.
Gently down the inside, McGee holds the corner.
The 2 young talents in Australian motorcycle racing at the moment. That's being a bit cruel to a few other very talented people, but let's say the talents who have been given a chance.
Back end of Osborne's bike really moving around there under brakes. He's really caning the machine.
McGee and Osborne being very sensible. This is no time in the series to start trying to become a hero against a man who's been riding this bike, Kevin McGee, all this year in 11 World Championship races, and who's been in 500cc World Championship Grands Prix for several years.
And I think this is going to be the most critical lap of the race, the next one. It's a question of whether McElnay now can open up that lead, get away from McGee and make the race his own, or whether the Australian's going to get onto the tail of the English rider and learn from him.
0.86 of a second separates McElnay from McGee as they cross the start-finish line.
And McElnay 1:13.6, 4/10 outside his own best qualifying time, and McGee's on their first flying lap, the 2nd lap of the race, and 1 second outside the lap record.
And at that distance, McGee isn't going to pick up a lot of tips from McElnay. He'll barely be able to see the braking points and peeling off points and have to concentrate much more on what he's doing himself.
In fact, this is the way it should be. If McGee were on McElnay, McElnay should be ashamed of himself. McGee, on the other hand, should be ahead of Donny Osborne, who's trying so hard on the V3. 125 horsepower on the Honda, 1983 model, not with the factory engine that Malcolm Campbell had last year to set the lap record with. And there you see the laid-out plan of the circuit as they come onto the straight from the chopper shot.
McElnay low over the handlebars, goes through, and he's opened up just 0.6 of a second on that lap, about half a second on Kevin McGee.
And McElnay's 2 laps have varied, his 2 flying laps, by 100th of a second. He did a 13.6 and he's now done a 13.59. That really is consistency. Kevin.
The 2 bikes are being looked after by former Australian world champion Kel Carruthers, who's come out to Australia for the first time in 4 years, particularly to look after the 2 machines, and already he's made subtle differences in the 2 bikes. McEl's bike has been softened in the front end, whereas McGee has gone for a harder setting of suspension and has also gone for a slightly bigger second gear.
Yes, indeed, and a taller top gear too for McGee. Slight difference in front suspension and gearing. The bike that McGee is riding is the one that McEl rode in the last round of the World Championships, where McEl crashed at San Marino in Misano.
And you can see those Yamahas moving around. It's a very abrasive surface here at Surfers Paradise, and with over 140 brake horsepower on tap, it really abuses the rear tyres, and these Yamahas can slide the back end around any corner at almost any speed.
And the gap stabilises to 1.3 seconds between the two of them. But indeed, down the back straight there, doesn't it look as if McGee is just getting ever so slightly closer to Rob McEl?
Well, McEl's lap that time was a 13.71, 156.2 kilometres an hour, so he's backed off just a fraction.
And McGee really can't get on the power any earlier. The thing gave a vicious slide and a weave then as it ran over the ripples, leaving the right-hander going onto the back straight, and then he's used all the road and a little bit more.
Third place is young Donny Osborne from Geelong in Victoria. This is the bike that Malcolm Campbell rode last year in the series, although with a different engine in the bike. It was going to sit in the workshop for this year's Swann Insurance Series until Vince Genova, a Melbourne motorcycle enthusiast and quite a handy sidecar rider, got together with Donny's father Alan. Together they put in $30,000 and purchased this machine as someone's down.
That's the VF750 Honda of Hayward.
He's a big man, as you can see, and quite okay, happily.
But it looks as though he spilt some oil or something on the track, probably off the racing line.
He was riding the McPhee Transport entries in the recent production races, the Castrol 6R and the Shell 3R up here. 82 is Tony Armstrong on the Suzuki 750. And the race leader, fairly clearly, is this man. He's only won 2 previous Swann heats in 3 visits. Been on a Suzuki that's been the machine chasing all the time. Last year, Gardner's V4 Honda. Previous year, the V3 of Malcolm Campbell. But this year, in his element. Glorious motorcycle.
It's really difficult to express just how different it is, this Yamaha that he's now riding, to the old Suzuki. It's like the difference between a V6 Holden and a Ferrari, really. They're just totally different motorcycles, years apart in development time, in power, performance, and even in reliability. These Yamahas, under the watchful eye of Kel Carruthers, are incredibly reliable machines.
Not only Kel Carruthers, but looking after Rob's bike, specifically, is Bernard Martignac, a very Frenchman, who's been 1 year with the Marlboro Yamaha team, previously 2 years with the Honda Endurance race team that's won the World Championship on several occasions, and then 2 years before that with their Sun Auto Yamaha, looking after Marc Fontaine's bike.
There goes the leader, Rob McEl. Behind him, only daylight, and then comes Kevin McGee from Victoria on the second of the Marlboro Yamahas. Behind him in third place is Donny Osborne on the V3 Honda. Behind him, extraordinarily, is Michael Dowson on the production motorcycle, the FZR 1000 Yamaha. Then behind him is bike 36, Hamish McNichol on the TZ 750 Yamaha, and behind him David Horton on one of the older Suzuki RGB Mark 7s, a 500cc Grand Prix machine.
And doing the same job on Kevin McGee's bike number 2 as Bernard Martignac does for Rob McElnay on the bike M is Warren Willing, of course.
Have you ever seen a man so happy? I mean, I said to him today, the grin hasn't been off your face all weekend. He said, because I'm working on a real racing bike.
In fact, it's probably as much of a chance for Warren to impress the right sort of people as it is for Kevin McGee.
Buckmaster goes through bike 27, David Horton. So Simon Buckmaster, the young Englishman, starts to work his way up through the field, taking over 6th position from Horton, and Horton not giving it away easily on bike 27. Back to our race leader, Rob McEl. Outdistancing the ABC helicopter flown by Gary Ticehurst. There's no way in the wide world the chopper will stay up with that racing motorcycle down this long Surfers Paradise straight.
McEl now dropping out to the 14s. Behind him, Kevin McGee about 6 seconds in arrears, as they're now on lap 9, so not a lot per lap lost by McGee, but certainly McEl not at full stretch.
And McEl was saying that because the Surfers Paradise surface is so abrasive, it does abuse the rear tyres, that he might adjust the rear suspension actually while he's riding the motorcycle. It's a rather unique feature of these Yamahas that the Öhlins rear suspension unit, at least the preload on the spring, can be adjusted by the rider. There's a little knurled knob above the left-hand handlebar, and as if he hadn't got enough to think about controlling the 140 brake horsepower motorcycle, he can twiddle this knob and give the rear tyre an easier time of it later on in the race.
Quite remarkable, the race development that's gone on. In 1986, that bike weighs about 120 kilos, pumps out 140 odd horsepower from 500 cc's. Back in 1978, the whiz-bang motorcycle of the time was a TZ 750 Yamaha. It weighed 170 odd kilos, pushed out 140 odd horsepower from 750 cc's. So they've taken away a third of the engine capacity, pruned off a third of the weight, and got the same power output. Obviously much better performance with a better power to weight.
One of the disappointments of the Swann Insurance Series, well, we just saw McEl already lap Jeffrey Sale, one of the better riders to go to Europe, Peter, but hampered by a machine which honestly isn't on the pace this weekend.
No, it's really the first racing outing for Jeff's bike. It's a road-going RG 500 Suzuki that's had some very interesting modifications to make it a racing machine. A reed valve induction replaces the disc valve induction, but it's a long way to go to be competitive with a Grand Prix 500 like this one of McElnay's.
The race leader goes through, and then also moving past Sale is McGee, 24 years old, compared with 27-year-old McElnay, or he will be on December the 12th. What a great job he's doing, but a meteoric rise Kevin McGee has had through motorcycle racing.
Incidentally, the seeming imbalance you see on the left-hand side of the machine around the tyres is in fact simply the name Michelin raised out of the tyre itself and painted white. It's not the tyre out of balance at all. It's simply the fact that the maker's name is going round at very high speed.
And these Michelin radials are tremendous tyres. They've developed a tyre now that can be slid so predictably by the riders of these Grand Prix bikes. They're very, very rideable motorcycles, in fact. The power band is wide enough to motor the thing through the corners, sliding the back end and laying a huge black strip of rubber on the tarmac. That's when it's in the hands of the arch experts like Lawson and McElnay here.
In fact, it was a telling factor here last year between, as we see this battle, great one with 36, Hamish McNichol. He's on the TZ 750 that I was referring to. It's such a heavy bike. Buckmaster passing him.
For 5th place, so Simon Buckmaster starting to get his confidence in the Surfers Paradise circuit and moving his way up through the field. But now McNichol potentially going to come under threat from David Horton on the Suzuki, which is looming behind as well, sucked through by Buckmaster. Coming up to take the blue flag, final lap of this first heat of the 6th race Swann Insurance Motorcycle Series for 86 is Rob McElnay.
A beautiful ride from Rob. He did what he had to do. He gave McGee no chance of following him and no chance of learning what's the difference between his racing line and McGee's own racing line, and he really has preserved that advantage to go into the second leg, and that's very, very important.
His last win in a Swan Series heat was here at Surfers, Heat 1 in 1984. He didn't win any of the heats last year. 2 were won by Malcolm Campbell, 4 by Wayne Gardner, and he won 2. I was wrong when I said he'd won only 2 in his 3 visits. He's won 3 altogether because he won the first heat at Calder in 83 and then a heat again at Surfers in 83, the first heat here. So he's coming up for his second Surfers victory out of 4 altogether in his 4 Swan Series visits.
Up on the ripple strips goes Rob McEl, and I don't know whether that was quite planned, as he comes around the last corner and guns it down the main straight to take the checkered flag. Almost the full length of the straight clear of Kevin McGee on the second of the Mulberry Yamahas, who in turn will be a full length of the straight clear again from Donny Osborne. 9.49 seconds was the split from McElnay back to McGee. And then we look back down to daylight before we wait to see Donny Osborne come onto the main straight. Passing Jeffrey Sale, lapping him. And Sale looking with envy at the 500cc Grand Prix machine as he finishes 21.66 seconds behind McGee.
And fourth is Michael Dowson.
And here's a dice for 5th place, and it's taken by Simon Buckmaster. David Horton does overhaul the Hamish McNichol TZ750 to take 6th position.
And Kevin McGee's race time, 14 minutes, 54.66 seconds, 154.4 kilometres an hour. From Kevin McGee's second, similar YZR 500 Yamaha, Donny Osborne, 1983 V3 Honda third.
Well, is it too early, Will, to start talking about the $50,000 prize money that exists for winning all 6 heats of the Swann Insurance Series?
Well, Kevin McGee must have been looking at that until Rob McElnay was signed for the series, and probably going in for a quick chat with his bank manager about what might be, but certainly McElnay is well placed to do that.
But I think the form that we'll see here this afternoon at Surfers Paradise will not represent anything like the form of the next 2 circuits. That's because this track is exactly what Rob is used to on this Yamaha. It's what the bike's most suited to. He knows the track here and he can come and use the bike's full potential. The next 2 circuits are a lot tighter, and the Yamaha won't have the sort of advantage that it has here, and McGee, the circuit knowledge will be all that more important too. McGee will learn all the time. He's learned, I'm sure, from this first race. He'll learn from the second, and by the time we get to Oran Park and then down to Calder Raceway, things will be very much closer, and riders like Osborne on the 3-cylinder Honda, which he's only racing for the first time, will also have benefited from a lot of gained experience, and things will close up greatly.
A lot of motor